Hi, welcome to Six Tackles with Gus, looking ahead to round 7 of the NRL competition. Great to be with you, so much to talk about, and we're here thanks to Blue Bets. Gus is with me. You look a little bit strung out, my friend.
Been a busy morning, Matthew. Been a very busy morning out at Belmore.
Should I have brought my mask?
Bulldog Terrier. You should have brought your boots.
You don't need me.
We might need you to play.
Oh, please.
I ran a lap this morning. My groin's a little sore, but if needed, I'm ready to go. I don't know how long I got.
There was actually there was an Ask Gus question last week, which I was going to ask you, and I forgot. Might be prudent off the top. If you could bring back one Bulldogs player to play for your team this week, who would you pick?
Terry Lamb.
I knew you'd say that.
Yeah. Do you think we could get him back for a week?
He'd be handy.
Yeah.
He's still around the joint.
You could play him anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. So how many you lost?
I've lost a few. So already prior to this weekend, we had Jack Hetherington, Ray Fatala-Mariner, Matt Dory, Corey Allen, Braden Burns, Chris Patalo, Paul Alamotti, Brandon Wakeham, all out injured. Chewy Katoa, who had that terrible time last year with illness, played his first game back tentatively with the Mounties last week. It would be unfair to call upon him to play NRL at this stage. And then this morning, or this week, Ava Siumanafadai, Jake Avarillo, Brent Naden and Reece Hoffman tested positive to COVID. We also had some lower grade players, Josh Stuckey, Ryan Gray, Credence Toya, test positive, and other players like Jaden Tanner, Isaac Lumalumi and Zach Hetherington out injured. So we're trying to move our reserve grade game, and I know it's all about the NRL, and we play Friday night, so I'll talk about that in a moment. But from a club perspective, we were battling to fill a reserve grade side this week anyway. We're trying to get that postponed till Monday night. We're playing against Mounties, who we should be able to move that to Monday night. We've got our SG ball in the finals, in the preliminary final on Saturday, so we couldn't promote any of those kids. The Jersey Flag, we're actually promoting kids out of the junior league to try and fill that squad, because a number of those will have to go up and play New South Wales Cup, and then depending on what does or doesn't come back from Queensland after we play on Friday night. So at the moment, we've had to announce another top 24 to travel to Queensland. I rang the league today to say, look, we'll be seeking exemptions for several of these, and there's no problem. Once you have this sort of COVID interaction, they've got the plan in place that we don't have to worry about necessarily contracts or top 30s or whether they're development players or what position they're playing or what they're covering. They know that we've got to get bodies up there. But we're obligated to take 24 players. At the moment, we can only take 19. On Friday morning, we'll fly another 5 up there to be in the hotel but not in camp with us. We'll keep them separate so they're not with us. The issue is, and I raised this with the league this morning, what if we got there and after we travel on Thursday and between Thursday and Friday night, which we'll test them Thursday morning before they train, we'll test them Thursday lunchtime before they get on the plane, we'll test them Thursday night when they're in camp and they get to Brisbane, we'll test them Friday morning, we'll test them again Friday afternoon, and we'll test them 2 hours before the game, whatever it is that we do with our protocols.
What if you get 5 more?
What if we get 5 or 6 more? What do we do? And it was kind of like, well, we haven't really. I said, well, we might be the first. This might be the real test. So what I said was, is there any chance that, either from Titans or Warriors who are in the area, we can't ask the Broncos, we're playing the Broncos, but certainly from Titans or Warriors, whether or not they could provide a lone player to even stay at a different hotel just on standby, just in case we need it. So, that's an extreme case, but by the same token, the game's on Channel 9. It's our big game on Friday night at 8 o'clock. It would be hate to get in there and we haven't got the numbers to fill the squads. Hopefully that doesn't happen, but you've got to prepare for the worst, hope for the best, prepare for the worst, as they say. But at the moment, Matt Duffy, Jaden Ockenbaugh's returning on the wing, Aaron Shops in the centres, young boy called Jacob Carraz will make his debut for us this weekend, Josh Adokar, Matt Burton, Kyle Flanagan, Luke Thompson, Jeremy Marshall-King, Paul Vaughan, Corey Waddell, Tavita Pengai Jr., pending a fitness test, and Josh Jackson. And on the bench, Bailey Biondi-Odo, Joe Stimson, Max King, Billy Sirikas, who'll be on debut for us. And the extended bench at the moment is Josh Cook, Jackson Tapine, Declan Casey, Kurt Moran, Phil Makatoa, Zach Docker-Clay and Zach Hetherington. And hoping we get through the next couple of days without more positives. So Where it's come from, we don't know. We've had a few staff in recent times, and I got COVID myself. A couple of the players have had partners who have tested positive to COVID, and it was only a matter of time, I guess, before they did as well. I see that the isolation rules have stopped as of this Friday night. I don't know whether that's going to go across towards the NRL protocols or not. But if you're a close contact at home, you no longer have to isolate it after this Friday night. There's,
right.
I think, the new regulations, which is a sensible one. We've got to keep the country moving.
I thought this bloody thing was I thought we were
nowhere
kind
near
of
it,
over
mate.
the hill.
And I've still got it. I mean, I'm testing negative every day. I had it for a week and I was very sick with it. But I still have breathing difficulties. I'm still having breathing difficulties now, and I've still got a cough. And I test negative. I test myself twice a day, and I'm still negative. But I don't feel well with it.
Yeah.
And it's just, and it's in our club at the moment, and we've got to make sure we've got to protect the other teams we're playing against, and we've got to protect everyone else in the organisation. So we've got to keep people isolated, and we've got to travel isolated. We've got to stay isolated. And see if we can get this game on for the fans on Friday night.
So could you postpone the game?
No, that's not an option. We'll be there. We'll be there to play. There'll be some kids here that'll be very, very excited about getting an opportunity, and probably some others on the bench hoping someone else catches it so they get a run. That's how it happens, isn't it?
Run around breathing on everyone.
Yeah, sit there and cheer for the team, but the bloke in your position,
Oh, well.
if he gets COVID, good as gold.
You got a couple of kids there who are going to be Bulldogs first grade.
Well, there were some
representatives.
excited
Good on
boys
them.
there this morning. They walked in a bit starry-eyed, but they're going to get to travel with the first grade team, and who knows, they might be running out on Suncorp Stadium on Friday night.
Well, they're playing with a famous club. Now, on the back of Anthony Milford last week, you revealed the ins and outs of that story. We've learnt subsequent that he signed with Newcastle and he has been given the right to train. However, he won't be permitted to play until round 11. So in some respects, it's a win. He's got an employer and he's able to make an earn. But look, he probably wouldn't be fit to play in the first week or two anyway. But given he's not able to play until round 11, I suppose he's been suspended by the NRL.
Well, it would appear that way, and I think we're going to hear more about this. So probably now that we've raised the issues and it's out there in the open and people know exactly what's happened. I actually got a very nice text message from Anthony Milford and his manager during the week to thank me for bringing light to their story. It's far from over. On the surface, what I cannot understand is how the police have dropped the charges and how the court judge has viewed the video and cleared him and has accepted that the charges had to be dropped, and then the league comes up with a different determination and have to stand him down for a month. As it turns out, he could probably use that month just to train with the side and get himself going. It's no big deal, but it just seems a little... Anyway,
yeah.
I think there'll be a lot more to play, particularly over the contract business as well. So we'll leave it there. We've exposed it. Now it's up to the people to answer for it.
Gus, in 1993, when Paul Keating won the federal election, he said, "This is a win for the true believers." And I'm not being partisan here.
Mm-hmm.
When the Tigers won on Easter Monday, did you stand up at the podium and say, "This is a win for the true believers"?
No, I was jumping up and down on the lounge. It was exciting, wasn't it?
Do you know, I've spoken to so many people who were watching the game at the pub or whatever, and everyone was jumping up and down and screaming for him.
And for all those West Tigers fans and all the people within the club and everything like that, all that misery of the last few weeks and being targeted in the media and unfairness of the commentary, it kind of goes away for a moment, doesn't it? It just sort of, well, that was all worth it. You're kind of glad you went through it just for that moment, where everyone held their breath as that ball... end over end over end floated towards the post, and
Rugby League gods.
Everyone stopped. The whole Rugby League world just stopped for a moment, didn't they? It was, how long did it take? 2 seconds,
Felt like
and everyone
minutes.
just watched. And when someone goes for a field goal to win a game, like in a moment like that, I always watch the kicker.
Yeah,
that's because he'll know straight away whether he's got it, how he's hit it. And he wasn't sure for the first half a journey. So it must have been outside the post and floated back. He knew he'd hit it okay because he started to back away a little bit and lean. It's like when you hit a golf shot, you get a bit of a lean. So I don't know how that affects the ball, but it was so exciting. I've said right from the start, despite what other people have to say, that West Tigers will win games. West Tigers have got talent and they've got resolve and they've got character and they will win games. They're going through a tough time and they've been through a tough time. But in the last few weeks, they haven't had their halves. They still haven't got their best player in the club back yet. In Adam Dewey.
He's not back for a long time.
No, but by the same token, it's still, still the player unavailable and the key player in your organisation. Very happy for Jackson Hastings. We all know his history as a player.
He can play, Gus. He can really play. Like, I know he had a layoff there for a few weeks because of suspension, but I thought he went good in the first game for them, and he was outstanding on the weekend.
Well, he did. Look, Jackson Hastings, in his age group coming in as a teenager, was head and shoulders the best young halfback in the country. Undeniably, the best young halfback in the country.
Mm.
And that was recognised by all the people that watched those kids play at that age. And he ended up at, obviously, I think he was in the St George system at the time, and then ended up at the Roosters.
And debuted as a teenager?
Debuted as a teenager, and I thought played really well. There were obviously other issues there and concerns, and he went across to Manly, and he had a mixed time over there, and then decided to take the plunge and went to England, to the UK. Story has it that he went over to, I think, play with Salford, and the Salford were a pretty poor team at the time. And as I understand it, he got there and they were having their first meeting of the summer to say, well, we've got to do this better and we've got to do that better, and what do you think would constitute a good year? And all the blokes that have been at Salford and losing had said, well, if we could just win more games than we did last year, if we could just not run last, if we could just compete and win and not get flogged in a couple of these games and all that. And apparently Jackson Hastings was sitting there and listening, and he stood up, he said, listen, he said, we're going to win the comp. Get it through your heads now. You follow me, you'll win the comp. And took him to a grand final in that year. So he's obviously got great belief in himself and great belief in his ability, and he should do too, because he's quite a talented player. And he was terrific the other day. That little
stint in England knocked a bit of maturity into him, perhaps. I mean, as you know, halfbacks when are you playing your best football as a halfback?
Well, look, you can say that. To say that, you're intimating that he was immature over here. Well, I don't think so.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is that he didn't last at the Roosters, and there were some issues at Manly. So maybe some time away from the game helped him reflect on that, and he seems to have come back a more rounded player.
Well, wait on. Was that all his fault?
I don't know.
Or was that other people's fault as well? We don't know. I'll tell you what he did get in England that he mightn't have got here. He got a bit of love.
Yeah. Okay.
He got a bit of love from the fans. He got a little bit of love from the media. People didn't care about his past, and people didn't care about what other people said. All they looked at was his football, and they went, wow. And he was loved wherever he played, and he was dominant wherever he played. He was the best player in the UK. And it was a smart move by Michael Maguire to get him back here to Australia. And then, and I always felt that his best position is halfback, and that eventually they're going to have to make a decision, because they've got a pretty highly paid halfback there themselves, and they've got two of them, really. But Jackson Hastings showed that with his ability and his confidence, that he can steer an NRL team around the paddock, and he can ice a game when it's required at the back end. He had that much of a hand in line breaks and line break assists and try assists, and then that booming kick where we all held our breath. Ugh. Didn't you hold your breath? I held my breath.
I knew he was going to kick it. I'll tell you why. Because you're a rugby league god, man. They mucked up the first two field goals. Like they were legal. They hadn't practiced a field goal, obviously. Yeah. He kicked one over the dead ball line. I think Madden did the same thing. With 5 seconds left, you just thought, if the rugby league gods are going to give this mob anything, it's going to be this kick. And it went over. And it was nearly a 2-point field goal. So
yeah, well, they were close for a reason. I kept thinking that too. I kept thinking at half time, everyone was surprised, and you could see it on social media. You could hear it in the commentary. You could hear it with everybody, and even text messages I received and say, "Oh, what a great first half!" And fully expecting that Parramatta would come out and get it right in the second half and roll over them and win the game. And everyone says, "Yeah, but at least we competed for 40 minutes." And I kept saying, "I think you've got to believe your eyes. I think they're on top here, and I think Parramatta are rattled." And that's the way the second half played out. And there were some moments where the bounce of the ball went their way, but there were some other areas where they didn't have a lot of luck either. It was a 10-2 penalty count against them at one stage. Finished up 10-4
against the Tigers.
Yeah,
didn't know that.
Well, you got to watch the game, mate. You can't watch it with your eyes painted on.
Well, no, I didn't see the whole game.
Oh. Anyway, when the ball came back, and I'm watching the clock, and he's got 3 seconds, and I'm thinking, Was it a 1-pointer or a 2-pointer? I don't think anyone
so
stopped to think about it because it was a long one. But when it was in the air, and I watched him, and he wasn't quite sure for the first half of the journey, and then slowly his arm started to come up, and you knew it was going between the posts.
Now, I don't want to make a big deal of the loss for Parramatta, but I do want to ask you this. Is the lingering doubt around Parramatta, and look, they've played red-hot football to start the season. Penrith don't lose games like that. Melbourne don't lose games like that. Para can lose a game like that.
Well, Melbourne did. Melbourne lost to Parramatta earlier this year.
Yeah, but Parramatta are a top 4 team. I'm saying, like,
but you said they don't get beaten like that. They do. Everyone gets beaten like that at some stage. It will happen.
What I'm saying is
look,
they wouldn't lose to the team that's 9-5, would they? Like, you can't see Melbourne losing a game to the West Tigers like that.
No, probably not.
And I'm asking you, why do Parramatta have a bit of that in them?
Previous years?
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, Parramatta have got that in them, and it usually comes after they've gone well or when things are going smoothly. It'll sort of jump out of the ground at them. They're always vulnerable to it. They were like this last year, and last year was a repeat of everything we'd seen before. And I can remember saying a couple of times, look, they haven't found yet what it's needed to get this done against the good sides on the big days. But then at the back end of the year, their last month of football was terrific. Yep. Really terrific. They beat the Melbourne Storm, and then they got into the finals, and they won again, and could easily have beaten Panthers in that semi-final. That was an epic semi-final. And they played without Reid Marnie on that day as well. Yep. So they could have easily won the competition last year. But they've got to get back to that. Now, it's difficult to be that grim every week. The difference with the really good sides is that they just don't drop their standards from week to week. You know, they can rise to the big occasions, but they don't drop their standards for the lesser games. Parramatta are a bit vulnerable sometimes in games like that with the team that turns up and has a good day. And West Tigers had their best day for a long time. Their best day for a long time. And it wasn't that Parramatta were terrible either. They were extremely dangerous in the first half. There was a couple of occasions where they should have scored, but the last pass didn't go to hand or things went against them. So it wasn't a disastrous performance from Parramatta, but they just ran into a really committed team on the day and a smart little halfback.
Yep. Good on you, Tigers fans. We salute you. Got to back it up this week, boys. A question here on Ask Gus. Of course, you can ask Gus on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter every Monday. # Ask Gus, and we'll run some of the questions here. Dan McInerney says, Gus, the US market remains untapped and rugby league is growing a following over there. What are your thoughts on the season opener being played there? Is it a one-off, or would it be, if it goes ahead, part of a broader strategy? And what should Matt do when he's over there?
What should Matt do when he's over there? What are you going to do when you're over there?
Well, I don't know. You're going to come with me, so you'll have to be my tour guide.
Okay. It's a long time since I've been over there on the mainland. Well, the first answer is it would be stupid if it's a one-off. I mean, that would be ridiculous. Why would you go to the trouble unless you had some plan? I don't know what the long-term plan is to infiltrate the US market. I know that at the moment it's probably motivated through gaming and the access to the gaming dollar, to have people betting on our games over here in Australia. But whether or not we can convert or find an audience over there, a regular audience or even a participation, there are little pockets, you know, and it's only minor over there, and they've got so many major sports. It's not a code they've grown up with. American people still can't decipher between rugby and rugby league. They don't know the difference. They don't know what we're talking about.
Well, neither can people in Melbourne.
There's a real education process that needs to go on, but as the saying goes, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with just one step. So you need to take that step. We have stuck our toe in the water many years ago with this sort of thing, but a one-off doesn't do it. It doesn't achieve anything. You've got to keep going back and keep going back and keep going back. Russell Crowe rang me a few years ago. He wanted to take 4 or 5 teams from England and 4 or 5 teams from Australia and go to Las Vegas and play the Rugby League World Cup. And he said, as soon as we put a sign up World Cup, the Americans will say, well, it can't be a World Cup. We're not in it. And would then find a way to get into it. That was his strategy. And he spent a lot more time in America, obviously, than us, and he knows the psychology. He just said, if we get over there and said we're having a World Cup, the US attitude will be, it can't be a World Cup. We're not in it. How do we get in it? And go from there. And, we need to have an Asian strategy. We need to expand our game. There's no risk.
Didn't Super League have one of them?
Don't start me.
Well, they're going to walk down the main street of Beijing.
Don't start.
Who was it?
Don't start.
Who was going to walk down? Melbourne England's going to walk down the main street of Beijing.
Don't start me. Don't start me. Anyway, that's where we need to go, because we can't have our game shrinking. COVID's been hard enough, but even before that, and we've had no development football for the last couple of years, we've got a lot of work to do, You can't do it with smoke and mirrors. You just can't do it by putting out press releases and fooling the people that you're doing these things, which is, the whole state of the game business and the addresses that we had for 15, 20 years from the NRL was virtually smoke and mirrors. It was all covering up a situation that underneath was decaying, and we proved it. And it was proven. COVID exposed the myth.
So can I just say, you talk about the wagering around this. So am I right in saying that there's been elements of online sports wagering legalised in America?
Look, I'm not up with that. I don't worry about it too much, but I understand that there are, I shouldn't even say it because I don't know the story, but there are apparently contacts or people in that sphere here within Australia who are tapping into US markets, and people in the US tapping into markets around the world.
Yeah, so something to bet on.
Yeah. Look, please understand, and I get this a lot, and particularly get it on social media, or you get it from people, when you're out socialising, that sort of thing, and wanting to talk about improvements to the game. And comparing us with the NFL or what the EPL do or what the NBL do and all these sort of things, and the numbers that they get and broadcast, and I keep saying we're a very small country. We are really small in the overall scheme of things. Our game is small in the scheme of things. We haven't done enough to invest in our own international game. Our international rugby league body is a farce. If rugby league is going to survive worldwide, it needs to be run by people from the NRL, because we are the epicentre of rugby league in the world. We have to make sure New Zealand, Pacific Islands, Papua New Guinea are strong. We have to make sure that the UK Super League is strong and survives. We have to make sure that the Rugby League World Cup is played and that they're emerging nations, and they can't all just be playing in the NRL competition to fill these teams. We need to help domestic rugby league in these areas as well. And we need to have an Asian strategy. We need to have an Asian strategy, right? We need to have it, and we haven't got one. Well, you can't do it with smoke and mirrors.
Paul Mack says, actually here, another question asked Gus, with New Zealand, Samoa, PNG, Cook Islands, Fiji and Tonga all getting games during rep round, should Italy, Lebanon, Greece and perhaps Malta be afforded the right to play too? It is a World Cup year after all.
Yeah, but most of these players are coming from, second tier football or in the NRL with that sort of heritage as well. You're not actually advancing the code in other nations and developing players from those things. This is where I was with Peter V'landys a couple of years ago, talking about the need to assist with the development of the game in the Pacific Islands, where most of our Pacific Island players here in Australia are second and third generation now. They're born here. Their parents were born here. But we're not assisting those people in the islands. We're certainly not assisting New Zealand Rugby League. And it was a reason why the Warriors recruited me to assist with the development of relationships over there. And you've got the New Zealand Rugby League, you've got the Auckland Rugby League, you've got so many of our players that were actually born in the islands, migrate to New Zealand and then come to Australia for opportunity, where we need to help them stay in the islands or be in New Zealand. And there is nothing in New Zealand developing rugby league at the moment. There is no pathway for kids in rugby league at the moment. The Warriors are fixing that. The Auckland Rugby League are very proactive. The New Zealand Rugby League had no money and is virtually just, it looks after the international game, but we've tried to get those three bodies together to work, and I understand that they are. I understand that we made great progress there, and we've got to get the Warriors back home. Yeah. We've got to get them back playing out of New Zealand. We've got to have them with their home ground and their following, and reconnect with their fans and their corporates, and reconnect and give kids a pathway and something to do, because it's terrible what's happened, and they're a club that's really suffered, but so has rugby league in that country. And I went across there on the two occasions where I was able to get across there during COVID. I saw unbelievable potential, but the effects of unbelievable neglect.
Yeah. I mean, we were there in Auckland that afternoon when Tonga beat Australia, and that was the injection for international rugby league. Then COVID came, so we're
mate, I shed a tear. I shed a tear that night because I've been a great believer or always felt that we weren't doing enough and we needed to do more, and even around the qualifications for our rep sides and young kids that are born in this country but have a heritage and identify as Samoan or Tongan or Fijian or Cook Island or Maori or whatever it is it's going to be, give them an opportunity to wear their national colours and improve the international game. No one is doing it, and it can't happen unless it's done by the NRL. And the reaction, when I spoke to the Commission about it, their reaction was, it's not our charter. And it's not, and it's not because the NRL is a competition. The NRL is not even. The NRL is just a competition. They just manage a competition. Yeah. They don't even manage development in this country. We leave that to Queensland Rugby League, New South Wales Rugby League, Country Rugby League. They've merged, So I said, well, who's going to do it? If the international body is a farce, it does nothing. You don't even play by the same rules. We don't even play around by the same rules around the world. That's crazy. It's ridiculous. We keep changing the rules here and making it harder for everybody else to play. You're not thinking about the future of the game and the international game. And they said, well, it's not. I said, well, make it your charter. Change your bloody charter. Do what the people didn't do previously. Yeah. Because it was done wrong in the first place, and you've got to take it. And to his credit, Peter V'landys got it. And he believed it. He said, yes, we must. Well, then we had 2 years of COVID.
No one can go anywhere.
Lockdowns, no one could go anywhere. All the money that they might have had in reserves or had set aside was used up in putting people in isolation in hotels and doing all that. So they've been through a bad time. And so on this respect, all this got put onto the back burner. All this got put on the back burner. There is enormous potential still in New Zealand, still. But people saying that we could take another franchise there, it won't happen for another 15 or 20 years, even if you started now. Because it's been neglected for so long. New Zealand Rugby League couldn't hold it. They had no money.
I can't believe they haven't been given resources. I mean, there's an NRL franchise in the country, for goodness sakes.
Yeah, but that's the NRL. Warriors had walked away from development. Warriors had signed an agreement with Redcliffe to go and put their junior players in at Redcliffe because they'd given up on development in New Zealand. They were getting no financial support. It's privately owned. The people who owned it previously probably didn't understand development. Someone had convinced them they could just go out and keep buying players from wherever. So all that needed to be rectified. But it was the same when I went to Penrith 10 years ago. And the first ever commission meeting they had was at Panthers. I got them out there because we were in dire straits financially and all that. And I said, you people need to invest in the West. Western Wanderers have just walked in up the road. GWS has just walked in up the road. This is what they're spending on those things. You will lose this heartland to rugby league if Penrith and Parramatta are still running last in 5 years' time. You need to invest in the West. And I kept saying, you need to invest in it. You need to invest in it. They didn't. We had to do it ourselves. But look at what Panthers has done now. The league has to be the EPL. The league has to be the EPL of the world.
Yeah.
It needs to assist the English Super League. It needs to assist the Pacific Islands. It needs to develop New Zealand. And it needs to have strategies to expand the game around the world. So taking a game to LA should not be a gimmick. It should not be a one-off. It should not be just to chase the gambling dollar. It should go there with a purpose. We had people try to start up a franchise in Toronto for the English Super League. And, that's fallen apart. But it needs to be resurrected. If you're going to have people that are willing to do things that go beyond their own contract or beyond their own lifespan, to actually do things and develop things that go beyond their own time limit. And we don't have enough people in the game who think like that. People that don't think beyond their own contract. They don't look at the legacy they're going to leave into the future. You've got to have enough people that are looking to have something to be successful long after they're gone. And unless people start doing that now, then it won't happen. So that's a long answer. What was your first question?
I don't know.
It was going to the league a one-off. Well, it can't be. If it's a gimmick, if it's just to chase the gambling dollar, I've got no interest.
International Rugby League can be a success. Look, and you know what? The Tongan thing, that was on the back of individual players deciding that they're going to pledge their allegiances to Tonga, wasn't it? Like it was the Fafitas and all those guys.
Because we haven't done anything, Japanese rugby has very much infiltrated the Pacific Islands now. And, with the fact that sevens rugby is an Olympic sport, is a big draw card. And from there, they're drawn into European rugby. So European rugby and Japanese rugby is doing what the NRL should have been doing 20 years ago. But never had the foresight to do it, never had the people with the motivated to do it, never had the people that understood it, never had anyone that was adventurous enough to do it. People just thought at the length of their own contract. It was all about job security and job creation here in Australia, but not what the game was going to look like in 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 years' time. I'm not going to live to see it, Matthew, but I'd like to see some people motivated to help the game grow.
Well, I think everyone agrees with you. We've had a very serious start. I'm going to ask you one that we can have a bit of fun with. Then I've got a great six tackle trivia for you. I know you said it was a nothing thing, right? But if Zach Lomax jumped on the back of Peter Kelly, like he did on the weekend, what would have been the outcome?
He'd have gone home in a body bag. They'd have been backing the ambulance up to the back gate.
Would you have objected to Tyson Frizell being allowed like a free clip around the ears on Sunday? Shouldn't that be how you deal with this? I know we can't punch anymore.
You're getting into a politically incorrect. But
you know what? Notwithstanding that we not have violence in the game, etc.
I used to have a coach that, as we left the dressing room, he'd pick up the phone in the dressing room and say, "I'm calling 000 now."
Oh.
So that was the mentality back in the day. Rugby league was a very violent game back in the 60s, 70s and 80s.
But even the wives and the kids, right, on Sunday, right? Would any of them have objected if the ref just let Tyson Frizell give him a bit of a slap around the ears? Because that's schoolboy rubbish.
Well, so's a slap around the ears of schoolboy rubbish too. I mean, if you want to get serious about it.
Speaking of slap,
but had he done, let's say it was Peter Kelly. Or let's say it was Peter Kelly, and Peter Kelly turned around and knocked him out. How long do you think Peter Kelly would get today for that?
12 months?
Right.
I don't know. 8 weeks, 12 weeks? Okay.
I got a funny story, but I don't think I could tell it about Peter Sterling and poor old Fatty Orton.
Yeah, go on.
No, I can't. I won't tell it.
No? Six tackle trivia. I'm trying to vary it up. You're going to need a pen for this.
So what's your solution there? You want to let Tyson Frizell knock him out?
I was just saying, like,
you can't.
Not knock him out. I'm just being flippant. Like, he was being.
Yeah, but
I mean, he did fling him on the ground, I suppose.
How many players have we seen over the last few years since the no punch rule have suddenly become very brave and very cheeky in the clinches?
Well, that is exactly
and want
right.
to get in and push and melt it. Of course it is, and of course the players are thinking, he wouldn't be doing that if I could give him what he deserves. But we can't do that for little Johnny and Mum with little Johnny. Don't start me on all that rubbish.
Ask Gus. Get us on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. Now, there's a couple of here that I wanted to throw at you before we do our preview because I think you'll like them, and I'm just desperately trying to find the bit of paper that I had them on. Right. Scott Holes. Attacking players standing one or both sides of the ruck. What do you think about left and right hand attacking players?
With your playmakers?
Yeah.
I hate it. I hate left and right anything. I hate the fact that they play in lanes, but that's not the game I grew up with. It's not the game I coached, and it's not the game. I think that creates a lot of problems, particularly for development of kids. My greatest beef with that is they're doing it from under 9s and under 10s onwards. You go and watch junior football, and junior football coaches think they're NRL coaches and think players are NRL players, and they're pigeonholed from the time they're 9, 10, 11, 12, pigeonholed into the left and right-hand side of the field. Wingers, centres, halves, back rowers. I find that absurd.
They don't even know what position they're playing at that stage.
I find that absurd to be playing in lanes, and even in junior rep football. I wouldn't let them do it. I wouldn't let it. And there were some of the players, all these second-man players in our junior rep program, in the academy program, I wouldn't let them do it. I said, no, just get the ball out in front, pass, run hard, run fast. I want to see who can step and skill and find the gaps themselves. And what I find a lot with rugby league these days is that coaches are working too hard on trying to find the holes for the players, on trying to find the gaps for the players, or trying to find the play for the players that will produce a gap, when that's the player's job. That's why the great playmakers are so good, and that's why the good sides are so dominant. is because it's the players that are doing it. And I think coaches get themselves into a lot of trouble and put a lot of stress on themselves because they're trying to do it for the players. They're trying to give the players a magic pill, something magic that will produce. And it's up to the players to do that. You've got to give them the repertoire and the training and the instinct and the vision to be able to do that. Now, some of that you've got to do by employing people that can actually do that, but there's a lot you can teach and educate as well, and you've got to put them in that position. You've got to get your smart players in position as often as possible, get the ball the way they want it, when they want it, as often as possible, and it's up to them to work it out. The problem with our playmakers and our shortage of playmakers these days is because we haven't taught them to play instinctively. We haven't taught them to use this repertoire of plays and angles and what they call decoy runs and running patterns, to use those to make themselves dangerous and to make them dangerous and to know the difference. We don't do that. What they do is perfunctorily roll through this series of plays, right? You know, run across, dummy inside, dummy outside, turn it out the back. He runs across, man in front, turn it out the back, and hope to get 3-on-2 on the outside. The only tries that some team scores is where their winger's putting it down with one hand, he's got his feet in the grandstand. Because it's the only gap they attack. Drives me insane. There's 12 other gaps on the field. You need to have people that can find them. You know, like, do you think Munster goes by a...
No.
Do you think Jerome Luai goes by a textbook?
Yeah, yeah.
They've got to have the instinct. Do you think Tom Trbojevic goes by a textbook? And that's why our really good playmakers are so valuable, because there aren't many of them, right? And what we're trying to do, this has been a real problem with coaching for a long time, is that we're trying to produce the next Andrew Johns, or we're trying to produce the next Brad Fittler, or the next Darren Lockyer, or the next Tom Trbojevic, or the next, you know, Jerome Hughes, or the next Jonathan Thurston, rather than, you know, Jonathan Thurston was the first of his kind. You know, Andrew Johns was the first of his kind. You know, what's going to be the next, and how do we do it? How do we give the playmakers the training, the knowledge, and the confidence to experiment and explore the possibilities? They don't do that. They're typecast, and it's the problem with the development of a lot of our footballers and a lot of our young players, that they're typecast into roles and that they are choreographed and they're manufactured for a long period of time, and we have very, very few players coming through that are allowed to be, because the coach can't give it up. The coach thinks he has to do it for them. That's not your job as a coach. Your job is not to find the hole for the player. Your job is to put the player in the position and let him work it out.
Yeah.
And when he works it out, then he'll have it for good. It's the old story.
Am I right in saying that some of the good teams are moving away from this? Like Joey Manu buzzes around for the Roosters. Turbo's done it in Origin, and clearly at fullback can do it for Manly. And a lot of those top teams are now, their halves are linking, which we hadn't seen for many, many years.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, that wasn't coaching. So what happens is you'll get an individual sometimes that comes in and just does his thing. And a lot of the time, it's coached out of them in the lower grades. A lot of the time, it's coached out of them in the lower grades. And it's coached out of them before they get to NRL. And if they come to NRL and they do it, then it's a mistake factor. If they make a few errors the first time they do it, it's coached out of them. Now, what will happen is you'll have the player that comes in, and all of a sudden he's a breath of fresh air, and he's a light bulb moment. You know, whether it's a Joey Manu or it's a Latrell Mitchell or it's a Cameron Munster or something like that. And what they do is they gain the confidence of the coach to allow him to be himself. And the coach has got to allow him to be himself and trust him to do it, and understand, well, look, there'll be good days, there'll be great days, and there could be a couple of bummers in between. I've got to rise and fall with it. I've got to live with it. But where coaching futures are on the line, where people are trying to become NRL coaches, where they're coaching junior rep sides, where the win is almighty, where everyone is, that's the major focus of what they're trying to do. And you know, in the academy programs that I set up, winning wasn't the focus. You know, it was development. It was development of skills and talent, and bringing people through that could think for themselves and act for themselves, and get people playing together for a long period of time so they could gel with each other's skills. And you're getting me on a subject here I could talk for days, mate.
Yeah.
It drives me mad. What was the question?
Well, no, attacking players left or right.
Left or right. I find that ridiculous.
Good
I hate
question.
it. I hate it, and I find it ridiculous.
Scott Holes A+ for that question. Ask Gus, hashtag on...
What about the answer?
It was brilliant.
Oh, thank you.
Brilliant.
You're giving the question an A+.
Well, no, I mean the question.
What did I get, a D- or
No,
something?
no.
You're a hard marker.
You're always at least a B. Okay, let's have a look at the preview. Thanks to Bluebet, we'll kick it off Thursday night, tomorrow night. Now, I just want to mention that we're recording this around lunchtime on Wednesday because there's a bit at play at the moment. Obviously, Gus has addressed the situation with the Bulldogs, and I've just learnt that the Newcastle Knights have called a press conference at 2 o'clock with Kalen Ponga to address the ongoing speculation. So I'm wondering whether he's signed. Maybe. We won't be able to cover it here because we don't know what's going to happen.
They wouldn't call a press conference to say we've got nothing to say. You don't call press conferences to say we've got nothing to say.
Newcastle, I've been sent the tweet here. Newcastle have announced Kalen Ponga will address media speculation regarding his ongoing contract negotiations at 2 o'clock today.
Okay. So what's he going to come on and say? Leave me alone.
Well, if
I said 100% footy Monday night. Take your time, Kalen. Don't listen to the riffraff.
He's actually going to come out and say that I've listened to Gus and I'm going to take my time.
Why are the media so obsessed with who says it first? And how many times do we count the times they said it and they were absolutely wrong and said it without any basis or any truth to it? How many times? What is the obsession with you media people about, I have to be first to know? We have to know. Why can't you just be patient and let it play out?
Me for I'm not a newspaper journo.
You're a journo.
Yeah, but I'm a court. Hey, I'm not out there. I couldn't give two hoots who Kalen Ponga signs.
You embrace it. I thought you'd be different. You're not.
Oh, please. We're vultures, are we?
You embrace it. Yeah,
vultures.
Yeah, sitting in a tree.
Yeah.
Just waiting to pick over the carcass. That's what you like.
Gee, COVID's knocked you around. All right, Sharks, Manly, Thursday night footy. Now, Dale Finucane's out. He couldn't recover from HIA in time. Quick turnaround for them. Braden Hamlin-Uele, Gus, had surgery on a pec. They're saying 10 to 12 weeks. So McInnes to lock, Tolman into the starting team. And Morgan Harper's back for Manly. So down in the triangle, no Finucane for the Sharkies. Now, Manly, they've snuck up on us. They've won 4 in a row.
Yeah. Yes, I spoke to Des Hasler after they beat the Panthers. Not the Panthers. Who am I with? The Bulldogs. They beat the Bulldogs. That was their first win of the season. And Daly Cherry Evans' field goal late in the game.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Beat us 13-12. And it was funny because the year before when I was with the Warriors, their first win of the season, they beat the Warriors 13-12 with the Daly Cherry Evans field goal, and it led to a magic run of wins. And I said, well, mate, hopefully that sets you on your way. And
so what you're saying is you're responsible for Manly's success?
No, I'm not. Just that I knew it was coming before everyone else, that's all. I don't know. This is really hard. I thought the Sharks showed some really good signs against the Melbourne Storm. They've certainly got the attack to be a top contender. They've still got to work on their defence, and Melbourne exposed that on them. But they certainly rattled Melbourne's defence more than any team I've seen in a long time. They just toyed with the Melbourne defence. They didn't get the full quota that they should have. I reckon they could have scored 5 or 6 tries easily in that game against a Melbourne Storm defence that was trying its hardest. Their ball movement was terrific, so they can tear apart them. Which means Manly's going to have to come up with 4 or 5 tries to win this as well. I think this could be a really high-scoring game. I think this could be 30 to 28 or something like that.
Okay.
I think they'll go blow for blow. I don't think... so I'll slightly favour the home side, but it could go either. It might just come down to who kicks the most conversions, where the tries are scored.
Yeah. Okay.
They might score 4 or 5 tries each, and it's just who kicks the conversions.
Hey, I asked that Freddie and Joey and Freddie in the 8th this. It's probably a hard question to answer, but if the Sharks play Melbourne in 2 months' time, who wins?
The Sharks play Melbourne in 2 months' time.
After what you saw the other night. Do you reckon the Sharks can get them?
Well, they've got some improving to do. You don't concede in the 30s and suddenly solve that in a short space of time. They've got to work on that. And the problem is they're not playing Melbourne Storm every week either. They'll go back and play some others that they'll beat pretty comfortably, and it's whether they can. But Craig Fitzgibbon was the defensive coach at the Roosters for a long time, and we know how their defence. I think he's. There are some aspects there that he'll fix pretty quickly for them. And Melbourne are still Melbourne, they've got 2 world-class hookers, they've got 2 world-class halves, they've got a world-class fullback, they've got a world-class front row, they've got a world-class back row, they've got world-class centre. I mean, they're going to rip plenty of sides apart. They're not done yet, the Melbourne Storm.
No, of course not. But Fitzy's walking away going, I'm not
Well,
we can fix this.
You don't have to beat them now. If you want to win the comp, you've only got to beat them once. So don't be worrying about what happens during the course of the season. Your season doesn't rise and fall on whether or not you beat Melbourne or Penrith or Roosters during the course of the season. To win the comp, you've only got to beat them once. Right?
Yep.
Your season will rise and fall on how you develop your football during the year, and make sure you win all those games that you should win or against the lesser oppositions, and make sure you keep beating the sides that are going to finish outside the 8. You can't drop to them, and you've got to beat the other sides within the 8, and then you've got to get yourself in a position in the finals where you get one shot. You get one shot on one big day. It's okay, you've beaten us twice during the year, but we've learned from that. Now here we are. Now there's no tomorrows. It's sudden death. You're going to feel a tightening around your throat when this gets down to the back end, and we've got you. And that's when we're going to get you. So you've only got to beat them once, Matthew, not in a month's time. You've got to beat them in 6 months' time. Do you understand the mentality?
Yeah.
In the meantime...
You got me fired up.
Yeah,
I like that. Now, I'm not going to ask you to go in depth about Broncos, Bulldogs. We don't know what's going to happen there, except to say welcome back to Murray Martin. What a great story.
It's an amazing story, wonderful story. We had him at the Panthers there. He was in the Tigers system and very talented young player. And he came out to Panthers, made his debut for us out there, and he was in the halves originally with Nathan Cleary when Nathan Cleary first came to first grade. A very, very young halves pairing. And we made the top 8 with those kids in their first year. And Tamare moved on. He went to Townsville.
Played in the grand final?
Played in the grand final. He was doing really good things up there. And then all of a sudden he had that bleed on the brain. And I guess we all figured that would be the end of it. But he hasn't given up. He's got a very strong heart, that boy. And it's great to see him back. And I'm thrilled that he's playing for the Broncos on Friday night. I just don't want him to have a good night.
He can have a good night, but you want him to lose. How about that?
Well, that'd be nice.
All right, 5:30 Saturday. Cowboys hosting. There's some good games this weekend, isn't there? Cowboys hosting Titans. If football was played just in the second half, they'd be winning the comp. The Titans, unfortunately, it's not. Very few changes to both teams here, but the game up in Townsville is obviously a factor. Interestingly, Justin Holbrook hasn't changed the team after these first half flunks.
Yeah, as I said last week, when they went down to play the Canberra Raiders, ratings-wise, you would have to tip the Cowboys. My head sort of thought, well, the Raiders would lift, and at half-time it looked as though they had. They led 12-0. But such is the improvement in this Cowboys team that they found a way to win the second half 18-0 and got the money. And that's where you can see the improvement in them. They've got the right people in the right positions at the moment. They've got good playmakers and some experience there as well as some youth, and they've got a hard-working forward pack. They're going to be hard to beat in any game that they play because they make it hard for their opposition. The Titans don't make it hard for their opposition. The Titans make it hard for their opposition when they got the ball. They don't make it so hard for their opposition when they haven't got the ball. And they play in patches, and they've got, their best football is as good as anyone's. Their worst football is as bad as anyone's. It's just, they could beat the team running first. They could lose to the team running last. That's where they are at the moment. They need to fix that and be more consistent, not just week to week, but half to half, from minute to minute. They need to be more consistent in what they do. Based on performances so far, I would go with the home team slightly, all the time knowing that the Titans could easily blow anyone away.
Okay, Saturday night footy. Can the West Tigers back it up after their first win of the season? They play the Rabbitohs at CommBank Stadium. They have an unchanged lineup. Not many changes to speak of here. Gus, they've won 1. Can they win 2?
Well, you've got to believe your eyes sometimes. It was high energy from the Tigers on the weekend, really high energy. They look far better organised, and they'll gain a lot out of that. Can you imagine how many times they've been going to training after a loss and trying to pick themselves up and go again and find that belief and that confidence? And it would be a totally different atmosphere coming into this weekend's game. And thankfully, it's a game where they're not going to start favourites. Now, had they been playing one of the lesser lights in the competition, they might have started favourites and then been expected to win, and maybe the pressure could have got to them. But the fact that no one gives them a chance here against the Rabbitohs, well, they're right back where they were, last Monday morning when they woke up to play against the Parramatta Eels. Can they beat South Sydney? Well, that's interesting. South Sydney have got so much, it's a good quality side, and I know Latrell's out, but they got through to a grand final last year without him, and when they put their foot down, they can really make life difficult for other teams. the obvious answer is rabbit, and I think that's the way it will play out. But I'm really interested to see how the Tigers back it up, and I think they'll give the rabbit a run for their money. I mean, Bulldogs led them 6-0 after 30 minutes the other day, and spilled their lollies once they lost a player to the sin bin. But prior to that, it looked like they were really competing, and it was going to go down to the wire.
Yeah.
The only difference was the Rabbitohs put in an 80-minute performance and the Bulldogs put in a 30-minute performance. Tigers will have to do it for the 80 minutes. They'll have to be great, but they were last Monday. They'll get a lot of confidence out of that. Get their Tigers fans.
What a blue bet offering? $4. Ooh.
Rabbit win. Rabbit should win.
Gee.
But
$4.
you never know. You never know.
10 last week on blue bet. 2 o'clock Sunday, Newcastle versus Parramatta. If it was must-win for the Knights against the Dragons, it is absolutely must-win now, and they play against the Parramatta team chasing after the loss to the Tigers.
Yeah, I thought Newcastle were really good down in Wollongong the other day. Dragons were my tip of the weekend. I thought they were specials, and it turned out they won, but it took them a long time to get there, and I thought the Knights were very, very brave during the course of the game. Kalen Ponga, just for your interest, rated the highest player of the weekend on his performance and his contribution to his team's effort. He rated more than any other player in the competition on the day, with a huge amount of positives. Parramatta, we saw them last week. They are getting a few injuries. They need to nail this and get this done right, but the Knights returning home desperate. It may well determine... their fortune may well be determined by this 2 o'clock press conference today. Let's hope it's a positive for them and a positive for Kalen.
All right. If it is a positive for Newcastle and Kalen, you give them a hope, or you think Parra will win?
Oh, they're always a hope, and you're always a hope of beating Parramatta. But I think Parramatta will get it right. I think they've just got more points in them. And the Knights was on grit last week. I think that loss will have taken a lot out of them. I said, with about 10 minutes to go on the weekend, when it got back to sort of level scores, I said, these are the games you can't afford to lose, because it takes a lot out of you when you do. You play well enough and you fight hard enough to win, and you lose with a field goal or a golden point, or you lose in the last minute. It's really hard to lift yourself the following week. And we saw that with the Tigers. The Tigers had Titans beaten, got beaten on the last play of the game, and then were terrible the following week. Yeah. But then bounced back this week. So Newcastle got a big job on their hands to lift for this week. And like I say, the news from Kalen might be the
tonic.
The tonic they need.
All right, Sunday footy. Out at Penrith, a Sunday afternoon game. With Anzac Day Monday, it's a long weekend. We'll have another full house. They're playing the Raiders this week. Now, I had a question here on Ask Gus from AJ45. Gus, Penrith have won 50 games, lost 6 and drawn 1 since round 1 2020 for an 87.7% winning percentage. Where does this sit in the all-time Rugby League stats? I asked David Middleton, who came back to me with this, Gus, comparing the other teams in that specific time frame, i.e. 57 games, only 2 have done better. South in the mid-20s, 51 of 57. Dragons in the mid-50s, won 51 of 57. So the Panthers are right up there with the best records in the history of the game. Yeah,
we've seen a lot of records tumble in the last couple of years, haven't we? That's where the competition is at the moment, and that's where the Panthers are at the moment. Right at the moment, Panthers determine their own fate. They can win by as many as they want to against any team. That's where they are right at the moment. And I don't think they've been 100% on in their games this year. I think in a couple of them they've just done enough. But if the mood strikes them and they decide to put their foot down for the 80 minutes, they can beat any team in this competition by as many as they like. There you go.
How about that?
And I don't think they'll have any trouble beating the Raiders on the weekend.
Very privileged to be calling the Anzac Day clash again at the Sydney Cricket Ground. Dragons versus Roosters. Always a very special day for the country. And in the afternoon, it's great to see a lot of the return service people out there at the cricket ground to watch a match which is always, well, not always, generally very even and has a history of falling the way of the outsider. The Dragons have had a win. They'll be buoyed by this against the Roosters as they head in.
They will. It wasn't as convincing as I would have expected, and I was, whether or not they went into that game specifically with the purpose just to complete sets of 6 and hold onto the ball and not shoot themselves in the foot, and beat themselves, which they've done on a number of occasions in the last couple of years. But purely, play the 80 minutes out, and that's what they did. They weren't that adventurous in attack. It wasn't that inspiring, but they worked hard. They controlled the ball. They won the penalty count. Their discipline was better, and they won it in the last 3 or 4 minutes. And that's, if they planned the day to do that, then they executed their plan pretty perfectly. And if they're going to beat the Roosters, it would have to be a similar thing. They'll have to spoil the Roosters. They'll have to hold the Roosters to a couple of tries because, based on what I saw the other week, I think, I can't see the Dragons scoring more than 1 or 2 tries against the Roosters. So this is going to be a knockdown, drag-them-out affair. I think this is potentially, if the Dragons are going to win, it may well come down to the last few minutes or a golden point if they can hold the Roosters to a decent score. The Roosters have just got this outstanding record. You should get David Middleton to check this, but it's something like if they score more than 16 points or more in a game, they haven't lost for like 3 or 4 years or something. That's some ridiculous.
Jeez.
When they score that many points themselves, they don't lose.
Yep.
So
you don't think the Dragons can hold them to 16, under 16?
I can see 3 or 4 tries for the Roosters. I don't see 3 or 4 tries for the Dragons. If the Dragons can hold the Roosters to 1 or 2 tries, there's no doubt the Dragons can win.
Okay.
It will really come down to the Dragons' defence. I don't see the Dragons improving attack-wise to post 18 or 20 points. Okay. I don't. They're going to have to win with 12 or 13. I might be wrong, but I'm usually wrong, but we'll see what happens.
Not usually wrong. Your specials have been landing everywhere. And the final game of round 7, the other traditional Anzac Day clash. It's down at Amy Park. Melbourne against the Warriors. And you would imagine Melbourne will be winning this one, Gus.
Hey, don't write them off so quickly, please. Don't write them off so quickly. Warriors, I have something to say about this. Warriors are going okay, and I told you at the start of the year they're a genuine top 8 team.
I agree with you.
Yes.
Are we going to get a tip this week?
You've just fobbed them off, so they don't exist. They'll just win.
I'm trying to let you get back to your COVID ravaged Bulldogs.
I've got a bit of work to do today.
You're backing out of here. Who are you tipping?
Eh?
Who are you tipping?
I'm tipping
Warriors.
Storm. So I'm going Shark, Bulldog, Cowboy, Rabbit, Eel, Panther, Rooster, Storm.
All right, good luck. I hope everything goes all right at Canterbury, and I hope you can get up there to Suncorp healthy and put on a show for us in Friday night footy.
They will. It's a long race.
Thank you, Gus. Thank you for listening. Another cracking edition of 6 Tackles with Gus. Surely we're on track for a Logie. We'll be back next week. Enjoy the
Logies for podcasts?
Well, we're a vodcast. See? Hello, Logie people.
I wouldn't be putting this on tape.
Talk to you next week. Enjoy the footy.